They said the doll was just an old toy, but every night it moved closer to my bed. Last night, I woke up and it was smiling at me. If you ever find a doll in an attic, never take it home. A scary doll comes to life. It started on the first day Emily moved into the new house. She was only 8, quiet and observant, the kind of child who noticed things adults didn't. Her parents had finally bought their dream home, a slightly worn but charming 2-story house on the edge of a small town. The moving truck had barely left when Emily wandered up the narrow attic stairs, her curiosity pulling her through the smell of dust and old wood. The light bulb flickered weakly as she stepped into the space. Piles of boxes, broken furniture, and forgotten memories surrounded her. Then she saw it, sitting alone on a rocking chair in the corner. The doll. Its porcelain skin was cracked along one cheek, and its glass eyes were a pale, clouded blue. Its faded dress looked as if it hadn't been touched for decades. Emily felt a chill crawl down her spine but couldn't look away. Something about the doll's smile, too small, too knowing, made her heart beat faster. She hesitated, then reached out and lifted it gently. A thin puff of dust rose, and for a second, she thought she heard a faint giggle. She froze, holding her breath. The attic was silent. "Emily? Honey, where are you?" Her mother called from below. "In the attic," Emily shouted back, her voice trembling slightly. She turned the doll in her hands, brushing the dirt off its dress. The tag sewn on the back was half torn, but one word remained clear: Lydia. That night, Emily placed Lydia on the shelf beside her bed. Her parents laughed when she told them about finding the attic doll. Her father joked that every old house came with a ghost story, and her mother said Lydia looked adorably creepy. Emily tried to laugh with them, but deep down she couldn't shake the feeling that the doll was watching her. As she got ready for bed, the air felt heavy, almost thick, like the room was holding its breath. The faint creak of the rocking chair from the attic echoed in her mind. She turned off the lamp and pulled the blanket up to her chin. In the moonlight, Lydia's glass eyes gleamed faintly from the shelf. Emily stared at the ceiling, trying to convince herself that dolls didn't move, dolls didn't breathe, dolls didn't smile wider when no one was looking. But sometime past midnight, a sound woke her. Tap, tap, tap. Soft, deliberate footsteps across the wooden floor. Emily's eyes flew open. Her heart pounded in her chest. The room was dim, the shadows long. She turned her head slowly toward the shelf. Lydia wasn't there. Her breath hitched. The blanket trembled in her shaking hands. Something cold brushed against her arm. Emily screamed. The light flicked on and her parents rushed in. The doll was back on the shelf, sitting exactly where it had been. Its cracked face tilted slightly, as if amused. The next morning, Emily's parents laughed off her story. Her mother said she must have been dreaming, and her father promised to tighten the shelf so Lydia doesn't fall again. But Emily knew what she'd seen, or rather what she hadn't. She remembered the cold touch, the deliberate steps. The sound hadn't been her imagination. Still, she nodded and stayed quiet, hugging her knees at the breakfast table. Lydia sat across the room, propped on a chair, her cracked cheek reflecting a thin line of sunlight. For a second, Emily thought the doll's eyes flicked toward her. All day, Emily couldn't shake the uneasy feeling that she wasn't alone. Wherever she went, Lydia seemed to be there too. When Emily played in the living room, the doll was suddenly on the couch. When she went to the kitchen, Lydia sat by the doorway. Each time, her parents swore they hadn't moved it. "You probably left it there," her mom said with a nervous laugh. But Emily hadn't touched it. She was sure of it. By evening, rain began to fall, soft at first and then harder, drumming against the windows. Thunder rolled across the sky. Emily sat on her bed, drawing quietly while her parents watched TV downstairs. Lydia was on the dresser now, facing her. The flicker of lightning illuminated the doll's cracked face every few seconds. The shadows seemed to shift, her glass eyes glinting in the flashes. Emily picked up the doll and turned it around. "You're not alive," she whispered, her voice shaking. "You're just a toy." She placed it back down and turned off the lamp. But minutes later, She heard the faint creak of the floorboard beside the bed. Her eyes darted open. The storm outside masked most sounds, but she could still hear that subtle tap. Tap, tap, like small feet crossing the wooden floor. Her heart raced as she turned her head toward the dresser. Lydia wasn't there. Lightning flashed, and for the briefest second, Emily saw a shape standing near her closet door. A small silhouette with glowing blue eyes. The flash ended, plunging the room into darkness again. Emily held her breath. The closet door creaked open an inch, then stopped. "Mom?" she whispered. No answer. Only the faint, whispering sound that didn't come from any human mouth. It was soft, childlike, giggling. Emily threw off her blanket and ran to her parents' room, tears streaming down her face. Her mother woke instantly, holding her close as she sobbed. "It's the doll," she cried. "She moved. She's in my room." Her father sighed, annoyed, and followed her back. "See? It's just..." But when they entered Emily's room, the doll wasn't on the dresser. It was sitting neatly on Emily's pillow, its small porcelain hands folded perfectly in its lap. The lightning flashed again, and both parents froze. Lydia's painted smile seemed wider. Her father frowned and picked it up. "That's enough of this," he muttered. "I'm putting her back in the attic." Emily grabbed his arm. "Don't touch her," she whispered. "She doesn't like that." He laughed nervously, but as he turned toward the door, the doll's head twisted slightly, just enough for its glass eyes to meet his. He dropped it instantly. The doll hit the floor with a hollow crack. After that night, nothing felt normal in the house. Emily's father insisted the doll was locked away in the attic, but somehow it always found its way back. Every morning, it appeared somewhere new, on the kitchen table, by the front door, once even sitting in the passenger seat of his car before work. He tried to laugh it off, but the color had drained from his face. Emily's mother started avoiding the topic altogether, pretending not to see it, though she'd flinch every time Lydia's porcelain hands clinked softly against a surface. Emily stopped sleeping. She'd lie awake at night listening to whispers that came from nowhere. Gentle, childish voices humming songs she didn't know. The air in her room had grown colder. Sometimes she'd wake to see her breath in the air, frost gathering on the window pane. Lydia would always be near, on her pillow or the end of her bed, watching. One evening, her father decided enough was enough. He grabbed the doll, shoved it into a cardboard box, and took it outside. Emily watched from her window as he dumped it into the trash bin by the curb. "That's the end of it," he said, forcing a smile. "No more dolls, no more nightmares." But that night, around 3 a.m., the front door creaked open by itself. The motion light outside flickered once and went dark. Emily's mother woke first to the sound of something small dragging across the hallway floor. A faint scrape, 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 like tiny porcelain feet moving slowly toward their bedroom. "Did you hear that?" she whispered. Her husband sat up, frowning. The sound stopped. Silence stretched for several seconds. Then came the creak of Emily's door. "Emily?" he called. No reply. They rushed to her room and froze at the doorway. Emily was sitting upright in bed, eyes wide open, as if in a trance. Her small hands clutched the blanket tightly. At her feet sat Lydia. The doll's cracked cheek had been repaired somehow, the smile painted wider, and its glass eyes gleamed wetly in the dark. "Where did you get that?" her mother whispered. Emily's lips trembled. "She came back," she said softly. "She said she missed me." The parents stared at each other, panic creeping in. Her father snatched the doll again and stormed out. "I'll burn it this time," he shouted. But the moment he reached the backyard, the rain began to pour, heavy and cold. The wind howled, slamming the gate shut behind him. He dropped the doll onto the wet ground and reached for the lighter. The flame flickered once, then died. Again and again he tried, his hands shaking. Lightning flashed across the yard, and Lydia was no longer on the ground. Something moved behind him. He turned slowly, his breath caught in his throat. Lydia stood there, dress soaked, hair dripping rainwater, her cracked face tilted. "Why did you try to throw me away?" she whispered. The lighter slipped from his hand. The rain stopped instantly, and the last thing he heard before everything went dark was the sound of a child's laughter, echoing from the mouth of a porcelain doll. By morning, her father was gone. The back door hung open, creaking gently in the wind, and muddy footprints trailed from the yard into the kitchen. One of his boots lay by the porch, split open like something had dragged him away. Emily's mother called the police, her voice shaking, trying to stay composed. They searched the woods behind the house for hours but found nothing. No trace of him, no clues, just silence and the faint smell of smoke drifting through the trees. When the officers finally left, Emily's mother locked every door, every window, and told her not to go near the attic. "We'll be fine," she whispered, more to herself than to Emily. "He'll come back. He has to." But that night, the house didn't feel fine. The walls seemed to breathe. The shadows moved like they had a pulse. Emily sat on her bed, clutching her stuffed bear, refusing to look toward the dresser. Lydia was sitting there again, perfectly still, her cracked face glimmering under the dim lamp. The doll's eyes seemed brighter now, alive, almost wet with emotion. Emily could swear she saw them shift slightly when she blinked. Her mother hadn't slept in 2 days. She stayed up drinking coffee, pacing, muttering prayers under her breath. At one point, Emily woke to the sound of her mother arguing with someone in the kitchen. "Stop it," she hissed. "You're not real. Leave us alone." But when Emily peeked around the corner, there was no one there. Only Lydia sitting on the counter beside the half-empty coffee pot. By the third night, the house began to change. Doors opened by themselves, lights flickered even when the power was steady, and a faint lullaby echoed from the attic at exactly 3:07 a.m. Emily recognized the tune. It was the same one she'd heard whispered in her dreams. Her mother finally broke. She stormed into the attic, dragging the doll by its arm. Emily followed, crying, begging her to stop. "She doesn't like when you get angry," the little girl screamed. Her mother spun around, eyes wide and bloodshot. "She's a toy, Emily. A toy." But as she raised her hand to throw Lydia into an old chest, the doll's head turned sharply toward her. The attic light burst, plunging the room into darkness. Emily heard her mother gasp, then choke. Something wet, something struggling. She screamed, running for the switch, but the bulb flickered back on too late. Her mother was on her knees, gasping for breath, her neck streaked with tiny scratches, as if small fingers had wrapped around it. Lydia sat upright on the floor, her porcelain hands resting in her lap, her painted smile wider than ever. Emily dragged her mother downstairs, trembling. "She doesn't want you," Emily sobbed. "She wants me." Her mother's eyes widened in horror. "Emily, what are you talking about?" Emily looked up the staircase. The attic door was open again. A small shadow stood there, motionless, waiting. "She told me last night," Emily whispered. "She wants to be real." The house grew colder with each passing night. The air smelled of dust and rain, and a strange quiet settled over every room, like the walls were listening. Emily's mother barely spoke anymore. She sat by the window for hours, staring into the woods, whispering to herself. The police had stopped coming. They said her husband probably ran away. But Emily knew better. She saw him sometimes in her dreams, standing in the rain, holding Lydia in his arms, his mouth stitched shut. It was after one of those dreams that Emily began hearing the whispers more clearly. They came from Lydia now, not just in her sleep but when she was awake. Soft, inviting, almost kind. "You're lonely," the doll would say. "I can fix that. I can stay with you forever." At first, Emily tried to ignore it, but the voice grew stronger, almost inside her head. Every time she looked into Lydia's glassy eyes, she felt herself slipping, as if the doll was pulling her in. Sometimes she'd lose time, hours gone with no memory of what she'd done. Her mother started finding strange things in her room. Drawings of Lydia with human eyes, hair from Emily's brush wrapped around the doll's tiny hands, and a half-burned candle beside a small circle of salt. "Emily, sweetheart, what is this?" her mother asked one night, shaking. Emily didn't answer. She just smiled. A small, empty smile that wasn't hers. Later that night, her mother found her standing in the attic again, holding Lydia close to her chest. The candlelight flickered across Emily's face, casting shadows that didn't match her movements. "Put it down," her mother begged. "Please, baby, it's not real." Emily's voice was calm, distant. "She's real. She's just waiting." Waiting for what? For me to let her in. Before her mother could react, the attic door slammed shut behind her. The temperature dropped instantly, her breath turning to mist. The air filled with the faint sound of a child humming, the same lullaby. Lydia's cracked mouth began to move, the sound spilling out of her instead of Emily. "You wouldn't let me play," the voice said, layered and hollow. "So I found someone who will." Emily's eyes rolled back, and the candle flames grew taller, swirling with wind that shouldn't exist indoors. Her mother screamed, grabbing her daughter, shaking her. "Fight it, Emily. Please, fight it." But Lydia's laughter filled the room, high, shrill, echoing from everywhere. Emily's body went limp, her head tilting unnaturally to one side. The doll's eyes gleamed, then slowly dimmed, as if something had left them. Emily opened her eyes again, but they weren't Emily's. They were glassy, pale, and emotionless. Her mother stumbled back in horror. "No, no, no, no." Emily tilted her head, smiling that same porcelain grin Lydia had always worn. Her voice came out cold, layered with two tones. "Mommy," she said softly, "you told me to take care of my toys. Now I am one." For 2 days, the house was silent. Emily didn't eat, didn't sleep, and barely spoke. She just sat in her room, brushing Lydia's hair with slow, mechanical strokes. Her mother watched from the doorway, her hands trembling, afraid to go near. Sometimes, she thought she saw Lydia blink, or maybe it was Emily's reflection in the doll's glass eyes, perfectly synchronized, like two beings sharing the same soul. The mother began to pray. Every night, she whispered desperate words into the darkness, asking for forgiveness, begging for her daughter's return. But the air in the house grew heavier, the shadows darker, and the whispering voices never stopped. It wasn't just Lydia anymore. Now, the whole house seemed alive, humming softly, like something ancient had awakened within its walls. On the third night, she decided to end it. She waited until Emily was asleep, or at least she thought she was. The candle beside her daughter's bed flickered weakly as she reached for the doll. Lydia's porcelain skin felt warm, almost alive. Her cracked smile seemed smaller in the dim light, but her eyes followed every movement. "I'm sorry," the mother whispered. "I have to do this." She wrapped the doll in a blanket and ran to the backyard, her breath visible in the cold air. The sky was moonless, the trees swaying as if whispering warnings. She threw the doll into the fire pit and lit a match. For a moment, nothing happened. Then the flames roared to life, blue and furious. From inside the house, she heard Emily scream, "Mommy, stop! You're hurting me!" The sound froze her blood. She turned toward the window. Emily was standing there, watching her, eyes glowing faintly in the dark. The doll's painted lips twisted in the flames, and a voice, Emily's voice, echoed through the night. "Why are you burning me, Mommy?" Panicking, the mother grabbed a shovel and began throwing dirt over the fire, crying, screaming her daughter's name. When the flames finally died, all that remained was a pile of ash and the faint outline of two small footprints burned into the ground. She ran back inside, sobbing. "Emily, Emily, baby, I'm sorry." The house was dark. Every light bulb had shattered. She stumbled through the hall, calling her daughter's name until she reached the bedroom. The bed was empty. The blanket lay crumpled on the floor, and the air smelled faintly of smoke and melted wax. Then she heard the soft creak of the attic stairs. "Emily?" she whispered. No answer. Step by step, she climbed, each board moaning beneath her feet. The attic door was open, and the faint sound of the lullaby drifted from within. She stepped inside. There, in the rocking chair, sat a doll brand new, uncracked, with golden hair and blue eyes that looked exactly like Emily's. Its porcelain fingers clutched a piece of paper. Trembling, the mother took it and read the words scrawled in her daughter's handwriting. "Don't cry, Mommy. Lydia says I can stay forever now. She just needed a body." The mother dropped the note, stumbling backward, her screams swallowed by the darkness. The rocking chair began to move on its own, creaking softly, and the doll's head turned slowly toward her. "Come play with us," it whispered. Then the attic light went out. They never found Emily's body or her mother. The old house was sold again 6 months later. The new family said everything seemed fine until their little girl found a doll in the attic. Her name was Lydia, and this time, she opened her eyes.